This is just an editorial note for this podcast episode. We originally recorded this back in May of this year, and unfortunately, as things sometimes happen, we had a couple of other podcast episodes that needed to kind of be fast-tracked to get out for a timely manner, such as the one that we had with Nick Reyes on the Frequent Miler Challenge. And in the ensuing time between when we recorded and as we're publishing this episode, things change. These things sort of happen. It's hard to cover some of these things because the bouncing ball, so to speak, is always bouncing faster and faster. And in this case, we talked about the Rio breakfast benefit, for example. With that said, there's a lot of this episode that's still very relevant, and there's definitely some entertainment value as well. So we hope you'll enjoy it, just with that one caveat that there are some things about the Rio experience for globalists that have changed. Thank you as always for listening, and now on to the show. Welcome to the Travel Stories podcast with your hosts, Trevor Mountcastle and Tom Kim. This week, we talk a menagerie of things, in fact. So let's just start it out. Tom, how are you?
Doing well.
Tom, where are you and how are you? Or how are you and where are you? Yeah, let's go with that one.
Okay, well, I am doing fine. I am recording this from the Grand Rio Hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada.
I hear that's a very popular destination right now.
Oh my God. I kind of wonder how many globalists. I wish they would publish the number of globalists staying. It would just be so interesting.
So is it people actually truly staying there? Is the buffet, overwhelmed with globalists?
Well, there's no buffet, but it's the Hash House A Go-Go restaurant, right? And yes, it is teeming, one would say, teeming with globalists. I think the waiter called them globos. Kind of like global hobos, globos.
Globos.
Yeah,
there we go.
I think globos there.
I think we've just established a new term for the pod. So have you witnessed any do you know who I am's at check-in or around the hotel?
I have not noticed any giraffes or, any other what is it? How do you pronounce this acronym?
Yeah, it's probably going to be bad for me to say it, but I think it's DIQUIA.
DIQUIA,
and maybe,
okay.
Yeah, I think that's how, because it's, DY know who I am. So there's, you kind of go down, then you go up. I don't know. I'm sure our listeners would love to correct us if we are off. And if they don't want to correct us, I'm sure they'd love to watch that video that we'll include in the show notes about the giraffe. But I'm a diamond, right? It's back to, but I'm a diamond.
That's back in gold passport days.
It is. Hopefully many of our listeners know those fun jokes. And if they don't, they'll, regardless, that video, I still just can't stop laughing when I see that.
Because you're an OG Hyatt person. By the way, OG means original gangster.
Okay, we'll go with it. I got my OG-ness from the status match from Marriott to Hyatt when we went to Japan in 2012. And at that time, we stayed at all three Hyatt properties in Tokyo. We had our lost in translation moment.
Back when they did, stay two, get one free. That was incredible. Those were the days.
Now I just look at their award chart, especially with that latest evaluation, and I just think to myself, wow, 45,000 points don't go as far as they used to.
How bad a global recession would we need to have them offer a promotion like stay 2 nights, get 1 night free?
I would not wish that on anybody. I mean, yes, the promotion would be nice, but I'm pretty sure it would hurt a whole lot more people than the benefit, those of us that would still be in a position to get those free nights.
I definitely feel like that stay 2, get 1 free was probably a remnant of the last great financial crisis.
It probably was. So, Tom, you've been at the Rio for the majority of the week.
Yes.
Any feelings?
Yeah. Well, first of all, there's a reason why the percentage of globalists in this hotel is probably off the charts. I can't even imagine even Chicago seminars or something like that would have as many globalists in one Hyatt as is, because it's like a triple witching week, right? Because you've got global bonus journeys, right? You've got 500 points per night as a new hotel in the Hyatt system. People are just going nuts. And you had $20 room rates, essentially with the after you remove the resort fee. So it's a little bit too enticing, myself included. I'm one of these globalists that came here to enjoy this wonderful points and miles bonanza. at this hotel. And I would say, I'm pretty sure that every night or every morning of breakfast that I've had has been $40 or more. And every night that I've paid so far has been $20 or, well, definitely less than $22 or something like that.
So they're losing money on you at this point.
I can't imagine that they're making money off of me. Yeah.
Although you are a gambler, so are you giving some of it back there?
I haven't given any back to the casino department here. I might before I leave. It's possible. But I haven't quite had the desire. Now, the one downside of the Rio is that casino is damn smoky. And that's probably one of the reasons why I'm not too much in a rush to spend a lot of time down there. Because I remember opening the door to the Rio, right, getting out of my Uber and thinking, woof, wow. This place has a lot of tobacco smoke.
Yeah, that's the biggest deterrent to me in any environment is tobacco smoke. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like it's like the 21st century that should have been gone. But I guess the other problem that gets me in Las Vegas in general is the other secondhand smoke.
Yeah.
I mean, in general, I just feel like secondhand smoke's just a little overwhelming in some cases.
And well, I mean, it's kind of the bargain you make when you come to Vegas. I mean, you're going to have tobacco smoke and possibly other smoke as well. And both are pretty obnoxious. And, especially this day and age, as you said, pretty much everywhere else, it's become a rarity. And as such, when you encounter it, it's just that much bigger, like an affront to your senses, right?
Oh, yeah. And I've got allergies, which makes it even worse.
Right,
But I digress. I digress from that. Any other thoughts on Rio? On the Rio, I should say, as opposed to, that city that we love down in Brazil.
Yeah, I could definitely see coming back again, even when the prices of the rates go up a little higher and there's not quite as good a bonus. The one thing about Rio, and I've been kind of walking around here, you've got like a couple other casinos and other things kind of close by. You got like a Walgreens across the street. I didn't rent a car, so I'm pretty much just walking and Ubering everywhere. And as a kind of place to kind of be your base in Las Vegas, it's not horrible, It's actually kind of nice that I walk out of the casino after, leaving the smoke zone. And, it's actually today, it's kind of hot. It's in the upper 80s, almost 90, but the breeze is blowing. It's really pleasant outside to go walk and, go do my Diet Coke run to the Walgreens or, go check out some of the other casinos and restaurants that are in the area that might provide some inexpensive eats. And even within the hotel itself, there's some good food outlets and things like that. So I actually think compared to what I was kind of used to staying at MGM in the previous years to also get Hyatt nights, this seems like a very good replacement. I just hope it continues to be similar. Now, the funny thing is it's just so dynamic, right? Because, when it opened up in March, they were very, very lenient on everything. And then they have slowly been clamping down on everything. It was, used to be that you would go to the on-site restaurant, and you probably have until like midday past or maybe even early afternoon to redeem your globalist breakfast. That is no more. Now you must, in fact, dine in by 11 a.m. At some point, I think people were kind of abusing the takeout. They were like, ordering 3 or 4 meals and taking out and probably not even staying on site. That's also gone. I think you probably take out your leftovers, but I don't think they're going to just let you do a whole bunch of takeout orders in the morning. So they continue to kind of clamp down a little bit because as with these types of things, hogs get slaughtered and pigs get fat, right? And people tend to take things too far.
Yeah, that's the phrase I first heard from Dia. Yeah. Pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered.
Yes.
And unfortunately, that is, that's a little bit of the case in these
Miles
types
and
of things.
Yeah.
I mean,
I feel like the whole priority pass restaurants thing, like I almost feel like that's kind of similar, although I'm probably one of the people who abuses that in some ways.
Probably not abuse. I mean,
well, I don't go every week or every day. And, when you start seeing flight crews show up at priority pass restaurants, you're like,
Yeah, that's probably, there's your sign, right?
Yeah. I mean, definitely at SeaTac, I've seen people in airline uniforms getting their meals, and I'm like, okay. And the fact that I saw them at this priority pass restaurant and then I see them again at the next priority pass restaurant, don't think that they were paying cash.
Well, and that's probably a really good segue to how you made it out to Las Vegas this time.
Yeah. Talk about OG.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I did a mileage run, essentially. It was part of a mileage run. So, for those OGs out there in the miles and points game, most of you youngins out there probably don't know what a real mileage run is.
Well, I mean, in all fairness, other than Alaska, none of the other airlines really support, the programs really don't lend themselves to mileage runs anymore, right?
I know. Of course, that's what it was. I'm trying to get my Alaska MVP, hopefully MVP 75K statuses here. And I happened on Flyer Talk, the premium fares Flyer Talk thread. I think I saw a one-way fare between San Diego and Seattle in first class, which normally wouldn't be that cool for like the $250, which by itself probably wouldn't sound all that interesting, except for whatever reason, this fare allowed you to route through Chicago. So I happened to book more than one of those.
Wow. Okay, tell us a little more about it.
Well, I mean, I just had to obviously position to either Seattle or San Diego. I happened to pick San Diego. There's just a nonstop San Diego flight on Alaska, and it's actually a pretty good one to pick. I mean, I'm only an MVP Gold right now, and I actually cleared my upgrade, surprisingly enough, on a Friday afternoon. And mind you, it's probably one of the last 2 or 3 seats of first class to clear upgrades. But I looked at the back. It was maybe half empty, and this is on like what I would think normally would be a pretty good load day. I wonder if United's kind of attack against Alaska and that nonstop flight between Dulles and San Diego is being successful.
I mean, is United still flying that wide body?
I think they are. I think my brother's actually booked on that in later this summer.
You can't beat that. I mean, for Transcon, yeah, it's the dorm room seats, but still, you get a lay flat on that. We did that last year.
It's an odd route to have a lay flat, yeah.
It is, but San Diego is a sleeper of an airport. I mean, I think they still have JAL flying nonstop to Tokyo.
They do,
and I think they have a couple of other long haul
interesting
flights.
Routes.
Yeah, they do. It's a little bit of a sleeper. I actually found 4 seats in business class from San Diego to Tokyo before the pandemic. I think it's one of those situations where there's just so much connectivity to Asia in that general area, right?
Yes.
You think between San Diego and all the way up to San Francisco, like
yes.
You could probably count the number of mainline airports that don't have a flight to Tokyo, and that's a smaller population, really.
Or Asia, probably, I mean, you even have those like kind of weird ones like Orange County to Taipei, or you've got
exactly. There's just
San
a lot
Jose,
of
right? San Jose, I think, has some sort of Asian service, if I'm not mistaken.
I was thinking San Jose. I just can't remember if it's JAL or not. Yet, Ironically enough, I don't think you see ANA flying to a lot of those secondary or tertiary cities.
Yeah,
I'm trying to rack my brain on that. I can't think of ANA flying to like a tertiary or secondary city.
Well,
anywhere.
They fly to Dulles and JAL doesn't.
That's fair, but Dulles is a United hub and ANA is a United Star Alliance partner. I mean, is my thinking.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But yeah, they don't fly does ANA even fly to Seattle?
I think they do. I think Asiana flies to Seattle. I don't wonder if that's going to stay with the merger with Korean.
Not to get on a tangent, but what is going on with that? I haven't really been tracking, and I don't know that I've seen meaningful Asiana availability lately, but I don't know that I've been looking exclusively for it. But I haven't seen any alerts. When I searched that part of the world, I haven't seen anything come up.
Yeah, last thing I heard is I think they got some sort of European, regulatory approval. That was kind of the biggest last thing that I heard, but I haven't heard anything since then. That was months ago.
Jeez. That's an interesting thing. I probably need to dig into that. Actually, not that John Ostrower, oh my God, what is Cranky Flyer's real name? You know who I'm talking about.
Not off the top of my head.
Oh gosh, or Scott Summers. So they just started the air show. They actually do some interesting deep dives. They did an interesting episode on India's aviation industry.
Oh, okay.
And then they did an interesting one on the 2 situations where Delta attacked a hub of another airline. The particular examples were Delta attacking Seattle with Alaska. Boston. Yeah. And how Alaska, redoubled efforts, really doubled down there, and JetBlue largely rolled over and died. Maybe not died, but, didn't really do a whole lot.
Well, it's probably reflected in their share price right now.
Yeah,
I would also say that mostly that's them, getting, double whammied between the government getting hit by the stick twice by the government between the antitrust for the merger with JetBlue and the American Airlines. What is it, partnership?
Yeah, the Northeast Alliance with American and the merger between JetBlue and Spirit. And both airlines, I thought, got a little hammered there.
Yeah, I think it was, I don't know. Personally, I think the government's not doing the right thing on this. I mean, if anything, I think had they allowed some of this stuff to happen, I think we'd have more competition, not less.
Yeah, I haven't dug deep into that. But what I have heard on a variety of podcasts I follow is that there does seem to be a much more anti-merger type feeling over the last probably 3 to 5 years. It's not my area of expertise, but there have been other situations, I suppose, in the tech industry where some mergers have been either, taking forever to not be approved or to be approved or just not approved, period. And I don't know enough to really speak about it smartly other than, those anecdotal data points. And obviously when you see that in an industry that we do understand to an extent,
right,
you start to see a trend.
Well, at least for the time being, I mean, you see both JetBlue and Spirit shrinking, their route networks and cutting back on destinations and, redeploying their assets. And the only thing that I see, the only people being hurt by that probably is the flying public, because you started to see less competition in certain routes. So anyway, yeah.
Well, don't forget the employees too.
And for the employees too, yeah.
If they're not flying as much,
yep.
Is everybody being fully utilized?
I will say I was very exhausted by my mileage run, but I looked at my Alaska mileage count and I made a little bit happier. So, I got plenty of time in the air in first class, although obviously on a domestic narrow body, not exactly the most exciting thing. But hey, you know what? I enjoyed it. It was a fun way to spend the weekend. I know other people probably like, what are you thinking? You did 2 red eyes over a weekend.
So let's just recap that, right? So you flew out on like a Thursday evening or something, right?
Friday afternoon.
Friday afternoon, you flew from Dulles to San Diego.
Yes.
On one ticket.
Yes.
And then on a second ticket, which was in first.
Yes.
You flew from San Diego to Seattle via Chicago.
Yes, that's correct. San Diego to Chicago and then to Chicago to Seattle.
Right. Yeah. So via Chicago.
Via Chicago, yes.
Definitely the clarity is good. And you did all that on a Friday?
I think I ended up in Chicago Saturday morning because that was the first red eye. And then I took a morning flight to Seattle, and then I got to Seattle probably about noonish. It was actually delayed a little bit. And I probably paid the most per hour for a hotel night ever because I was in the hotel for approximately 6 hours total, maybe 5. I took about a 5-hour nap at the hotel just to keep my sanity. And then I went back to the airport, did a trifecta of Priority Pass restaurants, or hat trick, I should say, of Priority Pass restaurants. Because there's 3 of them in SeaTac.
And you went to all of them, and how many of them did you see the same crew?
I think only one of them, because, the third one is kind of hidden. It's interesting. This was my first time actually going to the third one. I've been the other 2 several times. But there's a beer garden, believe it or not, that's a Priority Pass restaurant. It's called, oh, wow, how am I getting confused about what the name of it is? Hold on one second. I got to look this up. What was the name of that restaurant?
So you've got the 2 that you regularly go to. You've got the new beer garden, which sounds like a really cool concept in an airport. Brewtop
Social is the name of that third Priority Pass restaurant. It's actually, believe it or not, it's directly across from the American Express Centurion Lounge. So in that area where the Centurion Lounge is at SeaTac, it's kind of essentially mirror image of it, because if you think about it, the SeaTac Centurion Lounge, which is now the new location, because it used to be somewhere I think in the B terminal, but the new location is kind of on the mezzanine level of the kind of the food court area in the central part of the terminal.
I haven't been to the new one. I remember the old one, which had great tarmac views, or reasonable tarmac views. But how is that new one?
The new Centurion? It's definitely bigger. I was there pretty close to closing, and I didn't really spend that much time there because, quite honestly, that Centurion Lounge is not my favorite. I much rather go to the Sky Club when I'm in SeaTac. So I don't usually afford quite as much time to that Centurion as maybe some other people would.
Not a huge fan of the Centurion, the world-famous Centurion Lounge at Chicken Thighs.
Yes, Chicken Thighs. Yeah,
It is the chicken cut of travelers.
I don't know what it is with American Centurion Lounges and Chicken Thighs, but it is their number one meat of choice. I have had chicken thigh and Centurion Lounges all around the world. And strangely enough, the funny thing is the Sky Club, actually, I think from a food perspective, is far superior. They had a nice, a beef stroganoff, and they of course have Ivar's, clam chowder, which is, I don't know if you've had the Ivar's clam chowder, but it's definitely a Pacific Northwest Seattle kind of regional food.
It sounds like a staple. It really does.
So I always make it a point to go to try to make it to that Sky Club and try it out. I highly recommend it. I don't think they serve that clam chowder everywhere. I think that's part of that regional specialty of Sky Clubs. They sometimes try to have something that reflects the area. Yeah, I mean, the Sky Clubs really have amped up their game, and it's impressive to see. I don't spend enough time in them, not nearly as much as you do with your lifetime membership. I probably wouldn't have spent when I'm traveling with you. Yeah. I will say that's probably why I spend more time in Sky Clubs than a normal person would, because I do, fortunately, again, as being an OG Sky Club member, I have my lifetime Sky Club membership, which I purchased back when it was Northwest back in 2008. Best money you've probably ever spent. Or was it even earlier than that? Yeah, but it was. I mean, yeah, hopefully I can still get another couple decades of use out of it. It will probably be a very good use of money when all said and done. Almost as good as, what did Mark Cuban buy? A lifetime pass? Oh, the AA pass, for American Airlines? The lifetime, yep. Although now he's probably flying in private jets.
on whatever the Herjavec is advertising. Baja.
Some sort of fractional private jet service, I guess.
It's either fractional or it's, they have a stable of jets and you just reserve on the app. So I don't know if it's like fractional in a particular jet or just, access to, a fleet of them, based on your requirements. One day I will be like you and actually get on a private jet. I missed my opportunity so far.
Yeah, we did miss out on, or you did miss out on that. I guess I had some chances to get on some Gulfstreams and some other interesting private jets. But maybe that's a travel story for another day.
Yeah, that probably is, including my missed opportunity. So you made it to Las Vegas probably, if you left on a Friday, you probably made it on a Sunday?
Yeah, I got to Las Vegas Sunday afternoon. That was a lot of time, I would say, airside in airports on this trip.
It's funny. So we record this a little bit ahead, maybe a little bit more than a little bit ahead of when they usually get published, just because 9 times out of 10, we're trying not to be, that kind of breaking news sort of thing. And, schedules are hard to coordinate and everything. But I just listening to the latest episode on the main show of Milenomics, and Sam and Robert were talking about how they want to spend the least amount of time in the airports. They want to, if they can get a nonstop, that's what they're going for. And I totally hear that, but it's just really hilarious, how sometimes and even myself, even with my family, we'll bake in some time in a lounge because we know that we need a little bit of downtime between the flights. But we also enjoy the airports. I know that Sam and Robert are much more destination focused. It's just interesting to listen to how everybody's travel style is just, is different, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I know that my travel style has changed since my daughter was born. Now, whereas we used to do 2 or 3 nights for a European trip, I mean, my gosh, we're trying to do 4 nights on our next trip. And it's just, it sounds like not a lot, but like, for, really increasing your trip by 33% to 50% is not an insignificant amount, but it just ends up being the right pace for us. But we still try to, bake in time for lounges just because our daughter enjoys it. It allows us, some downtime for her to run around, get her energy out. Not that she's like the crazy little kid running around a lounge, but it gives her a chance. We can walk up and down aisles. We can, just get a little bit of that energy out.
Well, things keep changing. I mean, I know your lifestyle changes, obviously, when you have a child. But I mean, the other thing that's changing is, the airport amenities are in some cases improving dramatically. Like, when I first got that, lifetime club membership, you'd be lucky if you went to an airline, lounge and had prepackaged snacks. You'd have like, I have prepackaged cheese and I have prepackaged cookies and wow, I'm a happy camper, and I'd have like a espresso machine and that would be about the level of amenity you have in a lounge. Now, the game keeps going up. I mean, at Dulles Airport, I mean, we went from having maybe, one priority pass restaurant and, sundried, European carriers, which would hardly ever let you in if you tried to go during the evening, to having now a Capital One lounge and now a Chase Sapphire Lounge that's occupying the Etihad Lounge, which I was also able to visit on this trip.
I want to get into that, but I just also want to add another interesting comment just because I flew through Reagan National, DC's other, third or second, depending upon how you rank them, airport. And they have a Capital One lounge coming and a Centurion lounge coming.
Yes.
I mean, American Express and Capital One have really changed the game in lounges. And I think it's forcing the airlines to kind of up their ante as well.
Yes, I think there's definitely an arms race when it comes to airline lounges. And interestingly enough, the general public, it used to be these were, pretty obscure esoteric things. Airline lounges pretty much were in the orbit of your road warrior frequent travelers, right? And now your infrequent traveler, I think, is really making these things a destination, which is kind of interesting. How many like once a year or twice a year family trips do you see people trekking into a priority pass lounge with the entire, crew? It's happening more and more frequently.
Oh, I absolutely agree. I mean, depending upon where you're traveling, I still see more couples or business travelers, but domestically, you definitely see a lot more families. It's an interesting dynamic, and I think that's also driving a little bit of the food options. I'll talk a little bit later about our experience at the Centurion Lounge in Charlotte, but why don't you share a little bit about your experience at the Chase Sapphire Lounge in Dulles? Because I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to try to get there tomorrow myself, but I haven't been. And so
I think you'll be surprised. I mean, I think I mentioned to you earlier, I went there and, this is not our first time in that space, right? That Etihad Lounge has been there for a number of years, But the remodel has pretty much made the place unrecognizable. Actually, technically, I think the dining area is probably still where the dining area is now, is probably where Etihad originally had it as well. But, one of the areas that we never really got to see was the upstairs, first and foremost, because that was always seemed to be reserved for royalty or something.
And mind you, for our listeners, whenever we've been in there, we were flying in first class too. So,
yes.
So that upper deck had to have been reserved for royalty, I
diplomats or some other dignitaries of some sort. But no, now that area is open, and they do have a beverage station up there, and usually that would probably be your place to go if the downstairs is completely crowded, which it was very pleasant when I was there midday, but pretty much around 3:00, things really quickly escalated in terms of the population in there on a Friday afternoon.
That's my concern. I'm going to try to get there before 3, I think.
I think that's your best bet.
But it kind of switches up the game because, if you think about it, right? So at Dulles, you've got the Capital One Lounge that's in the main terminal. So you usually want to swing by the Capital One Lounge first and then make your way to the A gates, to try those lounges out before ultimately going to wherever your gates are. I'm flying United, so I'm going to be going to the temporary terminals. But, I feel like you get there and you're kind of racing the clock to get to those A gates because those lounges just get overwhelmed.
Yeah. And, definitely Dulles in the evening when all those bank of flights to Europe go. I mean, that place is hopping. The A and the, what is it? Is it A and the B terminal, I think, that are connected together. That's really just one long corridor, essentially. But yeah, that area is always very, very, very busy. And as a result, as a priority pass customer, you are going to be, hard pressed sometimes to find a place to go, even though there's lots of options.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And that's the interesting thing, right? Because the A and B gates, now they have the Chase Sapphire Lounge. You've got the Air France Lounge. I don't know if they've reopened the Virgin Lounge, the Virgin Atlantic Lounge or not. I think they were renovating
open, but
at
I
some
don't know
point.
I haven't investigated what the eligibility is of a platinum member or whatever, because at one point it was only platinum members because it was through Plaza Premium, right? That you could gain access.
And then they rolled that back at some point since the pandemic. And then you've got the Turkish Lounge, which everybody wants to go to. You've got the Lufthansa Lounge, and you've got the British Airways Lounge.
Yep. So many choices, and yet so many places to be turned away.
Exactly. No, it's true. So you spent a few hours there. How was the food?
It wasn't bad. I ordered a burger. I didn't really try anything from the buffet. I was there for about a fair amount of time, about an hour and a half or so. But, I just had some burger and it was served with some fries. I thought it was decent as far as, and it is made to order. You can, order it from your QR code and order it over your browsers. And it came pretty quickly. But, I think at that time there weren't a whole lot of guests ordering food.
I feel like that elevates the lounge, right? That made-to-order approach, it just gives you a little bit more feeling of luxury.
Well, it means the food's fresher, and it kind of puts it in, it's starting to approach, that aura of like a Polaris Lounge, the other, place where you can get kind of a made-to-order meal. I would say Capital One's kind of cool because they do have those, takeaway items, right? But they don't quite have they don't have the made-to-order kind of option, do they? At least not that I recall.
No, I don't think they do, nor does Centurion. I'm trying to think. I think the Virgin Atlantic Lounge also does that made-to-order sort of thing. And then there's...
But I heard that they had cut that out for the card holders, so I think that was mainly for like the actual business class guests. So they almost take away those QR codes during other non-Virgin business class hours of the lounge's operation.
Oh, that's interesting, because I was in a Virgin Lounge 2 years ago. They were doing the QR codes, and we were having... wonderful
I recall
stuff.
that too, but I also saw some reports that, those smart people that cached the QR codes were receiving made-to-order food, where those who went without, who had not done so.
Okay, so now when I go to the Centurion, or not the Centurion, the Chase Sapphire Lounge, I'm going to have to favorite that QR code or take a photo of it and just throw it in my little travel album just in case.
Yeah, but I think the truth is that the Capital One and the Chase Lounges, the caliber definitely seems to be very close, and I feel like and quite honestly, Centurion as well, I feel like they all have their pluses and minuses, If you're a fan of chicken thighs, I mean, obviously you know where to go, but if you're a fan of made-to-order food, you know where to go. If you're a fan of take-home food, you know where to go. So each one seems to have something that is defining their service and amenities.
It's so true. And it's such a cool thing to be able to kind of experience all of them. I know that some folks have challenges, I suppose, getting approved for Capital One cards, and that does suck. But, if you can get it, it just seems like, having that extra option definitely helps to give you, I'd say it mitigates your risk, right, when you think about it. Because if you can get into all three of those lounges plus the priority pass, then if you're turned away by the priority, by one or two priority passes, you still got Capital One or you've got Chase Sapphire. Ultimately, when we travel, we want to have options.
Right.
That's the number one. And then number two is the other side of the options. I had an interesting conversation and kind of segueing to our next topic. I had the chance to have brunch with Michael Traeger, who we've had on the show and we hope to have on again. He made what to some, especially after the topic we've just talked about, would be just almost, appalling of a comment. And his comment was that he would rather be in an airline lounge rather than, Centurion or Capital One or Chase Sapphire. And his logic was that all he had to do if he was in an airline lounge, if he had an EROP or cancellation, is go up to the desk because he'd be taken care of right in the lounge. He wouldn't have to leave his drink. He wouldn't have to leave his family. He'd be taken care of quickest without having to make a phone call. And I think that makes a lot of sense as well.
That was one of the biggest selling points when I bought my lounge membership years ago, was just, the option to have an agent work with you. And, at the time, I remember, I think EROPs were just that much more painful to deal with, right? This is before, you had your smartphone and you had, so many more options on apps and things like that. So, honestly, like back in the day, that agent in the airline lounge was, clutch, especially should anything go wrong. And unfortunately, as, seasoned travelers that we are, things do go wrong, and you have to be flexible, and you have to be able to know how do you recover from that mistake or not, or that EROP or whatever it is that happens to you. And, part of having tools in your tool bag, like a lounge membership that lets you kind of get to an agent faster, potentially.
Potentially skip the line.
Potentially skip the line, yeah. So I know Traeger likes to be a provocateur, but that statement may not be that provocative.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I think in context, it's not that provocative. But I think, it's easy for folks to kind of lose sight of that aspect versus, kind of the thrill of the moment of, hey, these brand new lounges, et cetera.
So how do I get to the Southwest Lounge, when my Southwest flight needs a change?
Yeah. Yeah, about that. I think you're just SOL in that one.
I don't know. I think if I want to go to the Spirit Lounge or the JetBlue Lounge, I think I'd probably have just about as much trouble.
Well, and that was an interesting comment I think I heard on that air show, was that JetBlue's challenged in joining any alliances because they don't have a lounge. I didn't realize that that was part of the cost of entry, but it makes sense because if they're going to give lounge access to, their partners, so if JetBlue became an alliance member, their members would get lounge access, but the other airline customers wouldn't necessarily get anything more.
Well, you'd think it wouldn't be that hard for them to open one up, Mind you, all these banks seem to be going gangbusters at it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they've got a new CEO. I think their COO is actually a JetBlue alum, Marty St. George, who I follow on Twitter. He's had some interesting insights.
Is he with LATAM? Was that what he's from?
Well, so I started following him when he was like the chief marketing officer, I think, of JetBlue. Then he went to Norway, I think. And then after that, he went to LATAM. And then now he's back at JetBlue. So he's been interesting to follow over the last 5 or 7 years.
I think if we made the prediction that JetBlue would open up an airport lounge, I think that's not that weird a situation because, normally you think JetBlue was so much more focused on leisure travel and things like that. And I think they pretty much said so, right? But kind of going back to our original statement, lounges are suddenly no longer a function of business travel. I mean, it's almost like the majority of people enjoying the lounges are more leisure or blended leisure type customers.
Well, if you look at it, the way they're doing the Mint routes, if they opened up a lounge in, let's say, JFK, maybe even Boston, they'd be able to cover the majority of their Mint routes, whether you're going to San Francisco, LA, or Aruba. I think they fly Mint down to Aruba. They fly at a couple of island destinations, I'd say. And so you could essentially align it to your Mint product, and then your Mosaic, I don't know what the top Mosaic level is anymore, members, they could extend it there or kind of, extend it from an elite standpoint as well. But I could see that happening. I could see JetBlue going
I
that
agree.
way.
Yeah, let's make a prediction. We're going to see a JetBlue lounge in the next decade.
Absolutely, especially considering especially if they're still committed to Europe. I mean, now they fly to Amsterdam, London, and I think Paris.
Yeah, either JetBlue will have a lounge within the decade, or they won't exist in the decade. I think
Oh, wow.
those are your two probabilities, I think.
I would have gone, they would have completely disconnected from Europe, jettisoned the Europe routes. But you think they won't exist? They'll just be bought out by, you think, one of the legacies, or you think?
It'd be fun to think of, if we're thinking of, prognostication here, I would say, yeah. You like those $10 words, don't you?
I do. No, I laugh more. This wasn't supposed to be a Nostradamus episode. We had 3 topics we started with, and this has been a real stream of consciousness. I think it's been kind of a fun episode because of it.
Well, that's true. But, I would think the perfect, marriage partner for JetBlue would be Alaska. You've got your East Coast compared to your West Coast. Mind you, they don't have a ton in the middle, but they'd have your bi-coastal elites all taken care of.
No, it's true. It's true. It's very complementary, the two of them. I totally agree with that. In fact, when JetBlue was on the hunt to buy or to merge, I was really surprised that they didn't go after Alaska.
Well, I think the problem is Alaska is not at all interested in being acquired. And I'm guessing that there's probably some financial barriers for JetBlue, which is probably the smaller carrier, at least from a balance sheet perspective, probably.
I think it is. I don't have it in front of me, but I feel like Alaska was the 5th biggest.
Well, they were the spoiler, right? Remember, originally JetBlue was going to merge with Virgin America, and Alaska came in and swooped Virgin America. And then, of course, JetBlue, I guess, took a page from the playbook with Spirit, but that didn't work out so good, right? Because they're the ones that swooped in to take it away from Frontier.
Oh, yeah. You're right. Although, how much of that Virgin network really still exists?
Well, if you think about it, a lot of the flights still exist, because if you think about their presence at SFO, it's still pretty fair amount of presence at SFO from a West Coast perspective, for sure.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Do they still have that Dulles San Francisco flight?
They might have gotten rid of that.
Yeah, that's... Yeah. But, I mean, they still have
San Diego, and they have Seattle, they have LA.
No, that's true. Okay, Virgin America lives, just quietly.
Just not with any Airbuses.
Yeah. I still love that one livery they had of the merging of Alaska and Virgin, the blue and the reddish pink.
I don't know. I didn't particularly like it. I thought that was a rather psychedelic looking plane.
It seemed so perfect for Virgin related, Virgin legacy. I mean, what with Virgin is not psychedelic.
Yeah. What's your prognostication around Hawaiian Airlines? Are we still going to see hula girls and Eskimos in the sky when all is said and done?
I don't think the brands can ever die. I mean, I think they've lost the Aloha brand. They've lost so many other brands, the islands of Hawaii have. I think the brand has to stay. But, I mean, if JetBlue couldn't buy Spirit, then who's to say that Alaska could buy Hawaiian? I mean, I'm skeptical. And there's been no real news on that for months now, it feels like.
Yeah, maybe they're just trying to wait for the election, Honestly, if I were merging an airline and I saw the administration being as they are when it comes to approving mergers, I'd probably be put in pause and kind of being slow in my roll when it comes to, trying to get that final say.
Yeah, but I mean, think about the other way. How do you plan a business when you don't know if a merger is going to be approved or not for years on end? I mean, many months to years. How do you actually plan your business? How do you run your business? You go status quo, but you lose the efficiencies that there's a point in time you look at an opportunity to merge and you're thinking, hey, this is the path. This is the way that we can get, better value for our shareholders. And then suddenly it's like 12 to 24 months later that you are either told, yes, you can or not. All those strategies that you had, even some of the people that you had that were spearheading those strategies might have been overcome by events.
Well, I mean, that's true, but that playbook must exist because I don't know of an airline merger that has happened in less than 24 months since being announced.
And that's a fair point, but it's just, I don't know. You know me, I like speed, except for when I want to relax in a lounge. So speaking of speed, last topic I thought we'd share or talk about, wife and I did a quick overnight to Charlotte. I was surprised about that. Friend, you didn't tell me. Well, it came together so quickly. We were originally supposed to be in Europe. British Airways messed up a trip that we had, didn't allocate a seat to our daughter. I'll have the full readout on that in probably another couple or few episodes because it's important relative to...
An interesting saga, apparently.
Yeah, I did it as trying to ultimately travel hack as a new dad, and it ended up being much more of a saga than I ever expected. But we needed to pivot, and My wife hadn't really gotten on a plane for like 2 or so months, and nor my daughter. And so I felt like, let's just go someplace. So we went down to Charlotte, 4,500 points on Alaska in economy. It is the new British Airways. I mean, I need to better understand how this award chart works, but for short haul, I mean, going up to JFK, I was even looking at Reagan to Jacksonville, all 4,500 points.
That can't beat that. That's cheaper than Avios.
Exactly. That's a screaming deal. I mean, I got to figure out how I can get more Alaska miles. I was keeping them for flights to Asia and Australia, and now I'm thinking those are domestic.
I think I know where you can get a small supply.
Wonderful. Believe me, I'm going to need them. We're losing that Southwest Companion Pass at the end of the year, and Southwest is just not doing it for us for those flights down to Jacksonville. The way their pricing has just gone astronomical. So, I'm going to be looking for those Alaska redemptions down to Florida to see the grandparents.
Have you checked out Qatar Airways pricing on some of those flights? Because, they seem to be competitive too sometimes, depending on the distances.
Ooh, I have not. I mean, I've looked at them for Qatar flights to Qatar and to the Maldives, but I have not looked at them domestically. So I'm going to have to do that.
I'd imagine that
Finnair might be an interesting one as well, now that they're obvious.
I do love Finnair. They are one of my favorite European airlines.
Yeah.
And I've still yet to fly in their non-reclining seat.
I don't think I'm going to complain about not getting on that seat. I'm not going to go out of my way for that. I know it's all like, Singapore.
It's all Scandinavian design and super ergonomic and makes a lot of sense.
Singapore seat's not amazing. So I have a low expectation level. So anyway, flew down early on a Friday. Wife took our daughter to a library and an Imaginarium over by the basketball stadium. I had to do some work on my day off, but it was necessary and it was fulfilling. So I'll just go with that. And then we walked around the city. Charlotte is a very walkable city. I think we walked to just about all four corners of the downtown area in about an afternoon. And that could also be
that could also be characterizing the size of the Charlotte downtown area.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's a very small city. We stayed at the Hyatt House Charlotte, which is where the Charlotte Dew was held that Matt from Savorosity held, 10 years ago or so. So it was kind of cool. So I think the 7th floor is where the conference room was. I ended up going down there and then we ended up getting a drink in the bar.
Trip down memory lane.
Yeah, it was exactly a trip down memory lane. And that was a cool experience. Then the morning after we had arrived, we were able to get brunch with the Traegers. I don't think we give as much credit to the value of seeing people in person and being able to break bread with, all these people. I mean, we do this on camera. We're looking at each other, through the camera, but, that's just not the same as actually sitting down, chatting, breaking bread. I think that's something that we're trying to do more. I know that's something we're trying to do more. And I think that's part of the beauty of the community that we're a part of is those meetups, and even not meetups, but just getting together for brunch or getting together for a drink or that sort of thing. And
I think you're preaching to the choir a little bit. I don't think listeners of this podcast probably need to be convinced of the benefits of travel.
No. The travel, yes. The going out of your way to be able to catch up with a friend in person is more what I'm, saying. I mean, I think a lot of us travel a lot of places, but sometimes don't do it in such a way that our paths can cross others. I know that, there were years that I traveled 100, 200,000 miles a year. And I don't think I have seen as many people as I've seen in the shorter amounts of travel since the pandemic. I've made it a priority. And, it's just those small little things. What's 27,000 miles to fly down, see a new city or see a city you haven't been to for a decade and catch up with a friend. That's
only 4,500 Alaska miles. I mean, why not? Honestly, some of these trips that we take, it's more expensive, to pay for the Uber.
It's true. Thankfully, not in this case. The one other observation I'll share from our experience is dining out in America has just become a little bit exorbitant. Maybe not just a little bit. I don't know what your experience is in Vegas, because I know you can find some really cheap food. But, I mean, we had a lunch and it cost us $65. Maybe that doesn't sound... Okay, yeah, fine. Maybe I'm cheap. I don't go out to eat very much in the U.S.
I wasn't saying that. I was saying that, I think there are much other places where you would purchase a meal for your wife and your daughter, and $65 would not cut it.
Well, in all fairness, we only had 2 entrees. Our daughter shared from the 2 of us. I think my wife had a sweet tea. I had a glass of wine. But I mean, the reality of the matter is it just feels like it's ever increasing. We luckily avoided any of those surprise 3% fee for service or for the employee healthcare, that sort of thing.
What, no hospitality fee?
Somehow we avoided it. I don't know how. We got lucky, but it's just a completely different experience than I remember, and a completely different experience than if you go to Europe. I mean, for what we paid $65 inclusive of tip, I think we probably would have gotten out of for less than 30, definitely less than 40 euro.
Yeah, it definitely is a bit of a shock, just obviously with inflation and, what it costs to dine out now. It definitely feels like more of a luxury item than it used to be, even when you're just going to, a plain Jane restaurant. I will say in some ways, like when you go traveling and you're having meals provided either by the hotel or by the airline or by the lounge or by the priority pass, suddenly you're like, wow, it's almost like that value has continued to increase as the price of dining out has continued to increase.
It really has. It really has. And I don't mean to be on a soapbox. I mean, I know we have a lot of great things in the U.S., and I love the fact that we live in the U.S. It's just that dining out aspect has just changed, feels to me so dramatically that it can be a little bit jarring when that's your only choice. I mean, we don't travel domestically nearly as much as we travel internationally when we travel. And we don't really go out to eat as much other than our kind of local dive bar, which has been fairly consistent. And so it's just an interesting feeling, when your options are pretty much just eating out for even an overnight where, you're sort of like, wow, so this is what all of our, all the guests that come, that travel in from out of town or travel from overseas are kind of experiencing. For me, it was very enlightening.
It is. And I think one of the things that probably why I'm out, and just coming back to the full circle from, where I am right now, I'm in Vegas, and, Vegas has kind of become one of those places where just I'm familiar enough with the eateries out here and the places I know I'm going to like and have a good experience where that don't cost a lot of money. Cause there's these places where you're going to go and you can get a meal that's pretty decent and you're not going to break the bank, and a lot of those places, they continue to have value because, they're there to kind of draw the patron in, and one of my favorites is the Village Pub Cafe at Ellis Island, that kind of off the strip casino. And I actually had dinner there last night.
They have a good steak there, I hear.
They do. They have like a sirloin steak dinner. I mean, it's probably Outback Steakhouse kind of quality, but it works for me. It's only $10. And, quite honestly, I had some food comps and stuff that was essentially free. So, mind you, it was very expensive steak if you include my gambling losses from that evening. But again, there you see, like that's how it kind of works out here in Vegas. There's still some lost leader type of situations out here where, casinos, hotels, restaurants, they're kind of incentivizing you to come in the door, hoping that you'll leave some money somewhere else.
But I think that's the exception that makes the rule, at least domestically. I know that I've chatted with other friends that were in New York and they were like, whoa, this is so much more expensive. And they live in Austin, which I assume is pretty expensive too.
Well, it's just the cities, the large cities, their cost structures, their wages, it's a lot conspiring against them, and, this is from, the son of a restaurant owner, like my parents ran restaurants for years before they retired. It is a hard business and the costs are incredible, from the utilities to labor to rent, it's a hard business to be in. So I definitely I feel bad for the restaurant owners, quite honestly, because especially the independent ones, I'm not so much for the corporate ones, but for the independent ones, I mean, you have to either have extremely good food or run a business extremely well. And ideally, if you're going to make money, you're going to have to do both.
So true. So true. Well, shall we close it out?
Yes.
I feel like we've started this episode out in laughter before we started recording, and we're ending it just the same way.
Yeah, I think that's a classic way to end it. I think that there's only one word left to say.
Thank you.
No, Melbourne.
Oh, gosh. We almost went a full Patreonics episode without Melvin.
And now I think we officially ended the podcast. Well, that probably wasn't the last word, but it should have been.
We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.